Okay, this is another video on the Downtown Canastota downtown trees and the environmental uh, impact of removing them. This tree is the one in front of the Chinese place with all the beans, and this brings out one point why some of the merchants were opposed to having the trees here is because they were making a mess with leaves and bean pods, and this I think is the only tree with bean pods or seed pods. And as you can see, today's about the 12th of March, and the pods are still there. So when we planted these trees 40 years ago, the village accepted the responsibility of keeping the sidewalks maintained under the trees. As you can see here, these seed pods came down months ago, and they haven't been removed at all from the sidewalk. This is part of the problem. It was created by the village, and the village's negligence or neglect. And the same sort of situation has arisen with respect to the size of the trees or the fact that they were growing toward buildings. My brother told the village officials repeatedly, over and over again, prune the trees, cut them back a little bit. They'll respond fine. It's a very, very hardy tree, but the village didn't do what he suggested, and the trees did get to be large. However, they could have been pruned before they were taken down at the beginning of this past week. They could have been pruned back heavily, and we'd still have trees downtown, and you wouldn't have the negative environmental effect. The negative environmental effect comes in the loss of oxygen that the trees produced. Most importantly, the loss of the shade that they provided for all these brick buildings, which, if anybody's ever lived in a brick building, they know they can get very hot. The sun beats on them in the summer. They get very hot, and the bricks hold the heat all night long. Not a very pleasant place to live. There's one. This tree didn't even really have to go. It wasn't even near anything. Not in front of a building even. I'll go down this side of the street. Now the village has said that they didn't need to do an environmental assessment, an environmental impact review, because this is just a routine project and there's no significant change in the environment. I submit to you that this was once, like last week, a tree-lined street. Trees are a very definite part of the environment. Now there are none of the trees. They've taken them all down. This should have followed the New York State DEC and SEQR, State Environmental Quality Review Act. I should have followed the procedures which called for an assessment, an environmental impact assessment, a decision as to whether there'd be a significant negative impact on the environment or not, and then subject to the public's review of that decision. The public was kept right out of the picture. Most people have no clue till they drive down here that this was going to happen. I sent a letter November 16th to the mayor describing my findings and the contract, some missing things, some information that was needed, and asked for a meeting as soon as possible with her and the project engineer, the on-site man. I never heard back from her. I called the village administrator several times in the beginning. Back in November, December, he gave me some information that I requested. Then he said the project's not going to start till spring, so we got time to talk about it. I said, let's not wait till spring. Let's keep getting these answers. However, I placed several calls after that and never got a reply from him either. Until I got a phone call from the mayor on about February 23rd that said, this is a courtesy call. Just want to tell you all the trees are coming down. It's the first I had ever heard of it. I had no opportunity, despite several requests to discuss this, had no opportunity to speak out on it, to be involved in any discussion of it, nor was the public, as far as I know. A group of some people were called to some sort of a meeting. I don't know if they were told the trees are coming down or asked. I don't know how the decision was made, if it was formal or not. That all remains to be seen. But the point is, the trees aren't here. They're all gone. Now, they do plan to replace the trees, but they'll probably have the environmental benefit of about 10% of what these trees provided to the environment of the downtown Canastota. Over time, this will increase, but maybe they'll get back what they just cut down and destroyed, maybe in a generation, maybe two. These trees took 40 years. The benefits were probably received after 20, 25 years. So maybe the benefits will be back again in 20, 25 years. Some of us won't be around to see that, unfortunately. And they appear to be on the verge of making a second blunder, and that is the type of trees that they're going to plant. The mayor told me they consulted with Cornell regarding whether these trees could be saved or not, apparently, or that's what was implied. I called Cornell University, the tree experts that I know down there. They never heard of the mayor. And then they asked me what kind of trees are going to be planted, and apparently, despite some recommendations I made for 2 or 3 species, not just one species, the decision was made to plant red maple. On the website, the village calls it mature red maple trees. They are nowhere near what would be classified as mature red maple trees. However, when I answered the question, what are they going to plant, and with the reply, red maple, the person in Cornell said, oh no, that's the worst tree to plant downtown. So I informed the village of this. Whether they do anything about it or not, I don't know. I was told the trees will, over a short period of time, probably die back, show some decline, the leaves will turn yellow in the summer, and probably eventually the trees will die or have to be taken out. That's like a follow-up. The main problem here is, the main concern is we've got no trees downtown. It looks fine now, maybe, if you don't like trees. But when summer comes, I think the negative environmental impact will be felt at its greatest. This didn't have to be. Environmental regulations were thwarted. They were violated. There should have been an environmental impact statement, and the public should have been involved. And when you do an environmental impact statement or review, you also look at the alternatives available to mitigate the damage, to reduce the damage. In this case, perhaps a mitigation might have been plant trees, but we didn't know that at the time. Because they didn't do the environmental review. Another possible mitigation might have been save 6 or 8 of the best trees, exhibiting the least problems, which is exactly what I recommended to the village, and then plant the smaller trees in between. And then you have two different age classes of trees, much more diversity, and promotes health, tree health, downtown tree health. None of that was followed. So again, I'll leave it up to you. The state environmental regulations, it's SECR, State Environmental Review Act regulations, part 617.5, outlines what the village can do without going through an environmental review and what they need an environmental review for. Any substantial change in the environment or the existing environment to be made, it's clearly outside of the exemption of not having to follow the environmental review process. It's clearly, and also there's another section that talks about clear cutting. The section says you can be exempt from following the rules if you're going to replace a dead tree or dead shrub, but not if you want to clear cut. And I guess this is, being a forest owner, this is what I would call a downtown clear cut. Every stick of tree taken out from the downtown area, except a couple outside the sidewalks.